Prime Minister Whitlam alights from the plane, Premier Zhou Enlai goes up to greet him with a welcome. The grand banquet in honor of Prime Minister and Mrs. Whitlam.
China is our close neighbour. In China today, we see a great modernising force capable of exerting profound influence in the world.
China's place in the world has changed significantly since Gough Whitlam moved to formalise relations between our two countries.
The first Australian Prime Minister ever to set foot on Chinese soil.
In China's approach to relations with other countries, we find a welcome emphasis on the principles of the equality of states and respect for the rights and views of small and middle powers. Our two countries will be drawn into closer cooperation.
And our relationship with what is now the regional superpower has also been transformed.
The visit to China symbolises the normalisation, a more stable relationship. I say consistently we should cooperate with China where we can, disagree where we must, and engage in our national interest.
One of the ironies about this visit taking place is, of course, it comes 50 years after Gough Whitlam, but on this occasion, it's the ghost of Whitlam they really don't want to encounter. This Labor government does not want to be seen as getting too close to China, does not want to be seen as trying to reset the policy back to the Whitlam or Hawke era of engagement. I think they want to be much more sensitive.
It has been a wild ride since the high point in 2014 when the two countries signed a free trade deal and President Xi Jinping addressed a joint sitting of federal parliament.
Let us join hands and work shoulder to shoulder.
The relationship started to cool with the Turnbull government's moves on foreign interference and to block Huawei from the rollout of 5G infrastructure.
You're worried they would be directed by China?
Yes, that is a concern.
Moves by the Morrison government to push for an inquiry into the origins of COVID made things much worse.
Some comments today in Chinese media accusing you and your government of panda bashing.
I don't think this is a remarkable suggestion. I think it's a fairly obvious and common sense suggestion.
And the relationship became weaponised in domestic politics.
The leader of the Labor Party is the Chinese government's pick at this election.
The anniversary of Whitlam's trip as Prime Minister in 1973 provided some positive timing for Anthony Albanese's visit to Beijing and Shanghai in coming days, the first by an Australian PM in 7 years. The fact the trip is occurring at all reflects considerable efforts by the Albanese government to stabilise the relationship after such a rocky period. And the Chinese leadership has also seemed keen to improve things, releasing journalist Chang Lei, dropping previous trade sanctions on barley, and reviewing its rules for Australian wine.
I think Australian wine, it's got such a fantastic quality and it really stands out in terms of its profile, its fruitiness, its softness, and it's something that the Chinese consumer, they really enjoy.
Nikki Palin is on the front line of Australia's recent relationship troubles with China as a producer in an export market that was worth more than $1 billion a year at its peak.
So 3 years ago, I was actually exporting about 90% of my entire volume to the Chinese market. And so if you can imagine when the trade tariffs came on, it was actually quite devastating for my business. And, so overnight, pretty much I lost all of that.
She's hopeful about the recent signals of a change of policy on wine tariffs.
I think that these sort of moves, like the Prime Minister going to China and getting the parties to the table, having these sort of forms of positive conversations, I just really feel that now it's finally we're moving in the right direction.
While the bilateral relationship may be stabilising, the regional dynamics are still troubling. The majority of Australians, according to recent polling, now mainly look at China as a threat. And China's rise has seen us draw ever closer to the United States.
United States President Joe Biden issues a stern warning to China following its latest act of aggression in Philippine waters.
The United States defense commitment to the Philippines is ironclad.
The world's attention may have been focused on the Middle East and Ukraine in recent months, but that doesn't mean the assertions of sovereignty by the superpower in our region have stopped.
I think what we've seen in recent weeks, certainly the bullying of Philippine fishing vessels in the South China Sea has brought that issue back to the regional focus again. There is a lot of concern around the region at continuing Chinese assertiveness, and some concern too that with an America distracted in the Ukraine and the Middle East, that Xi Jinping might well use this opportunity to bring on conflict over Taiwan.
Last month in Seoul, Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister Richard Marles told a forum that a war between the United States and China over the future of Taiwan would be so grave that Australia cannot be passive bystanders.
Mr Marles's comments in Seoul on Taiwan certainly represent a hardening, I think, of Labor's position. I think there's no doubt that Australia will back the American position on Taiwan. I could not see a cabinet of either political persuasion saying no to America if it was asked for military assistance in Taiwan. But I think the Australian position needs to return to strategic ambiguity, and Australia's watchwords on Taiwan should really be prudence, legality and negotiation.
For now, it suits both sides to reset the relationship after years of tensions.
There won't be a rainbow appearing over the skies of Beijing for this Australia-China relationship. The best we can hope for at the moment from the Australian side is, I think, stabilisation.
We are not going back to where we were 20 years ago in terms of our relationship with China. China has changed and our relationship has changed.
I think the Chinese are certainly more enthusiastic about where this might lead. The Chinese see this as the first of the next 50 years of the relationship. The Chinese side want a relationship that is not only stabilised but improved, consolidated and developed. But I think the Australians are not on that page at this stage.
We made clear we weren't going to play any domestic politics with it, but we also said we want to stabilise the relationship and ensure that Australia's national interests are safeguarded.